Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan, and we begin with news coming through where there's fresh trouble for Imran Khan in Pakistan, and it just looks like slowly it's going to move beyond the realm of the civil courts. Big news coming through where the anti-terrorism court in Lahore has actually now issued a non-bailable warrant, arrest warrant for PTI chief Imran Khan. The anti-terrorism court has issued this warrant on the request of the investigating officer. The IO, or the investigating officer, has told the court that an attempt was made to arrest the accused, but the arrest could not be made. The court issued this non-bailable warrant for Chairman PTI, besides Hamad Azhar, Mia Asim Iqbal, and others who have also been issued NBWs. And these are arrest warrants. A case has been registered against the accused for burning a container in Nasirabad police station and also attacking the office of PMLN in Model Town police station. This means that now it's under the Anti-Terrorism Court, the Anti-Terrorism Act, the Army Act, the Official Secrets Act, all these aspects now coming into play, slowly and gradually the momentum being built somewhere for Imran Khan's incarceration. Big news coming through that an anti-terrorism court in Lahore has also now issued NBWs against Imran Khan. Moving on to the big story of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who's going to be touching down in the US of A in a short while from now.
Of substantive deals, particularly in defense technology, are going to be signed. The big one, of course, being the GE jet engine deal for the 414 GE jet engines, which are going to be manufactured in India.
जब देश की प्रेजेंस यहाँ पे फील होती है तो बहुत गर्व लगता है कि मेरा देश का मैं हिस्सा हूँ।
का लीडर जो होता है वो ऐसा होना चाहिए जो इंडिया को प्यार करता है।
Plenty of aspects on the agenda, plenty of items. What's going to be priority? We'll talk about that because the stage is set for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's much-awaited and anticipated trip to the United States. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first state visit to the US, and he is expected to land at the Andrews Air Force Base in Washington at 10:30 p.m. later tonight. PM Modi is scheduled to meet top CEOs and noted American citizens before leading the celebration marking the International Yoga Day at the UN headquarters on Wednesday. From a private dinner with the Bidens to a diaspora event, from addressing US congressmen to bilaterals, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a host of events lined up. Prior to his departure to the US, in an interview with the US-based newspaper, The Wall Street Journal, PM Narendra Modi said, and these are some of the quotes from that interview that we're putting out here, that the relationship between leaders of the US and India is one of unprecedented trust. PM Modi touched upon a host of issues. Speaking about India, PM Modi said that he is the first Prime Minister to be born in free India, and that is why his thought process, his conduct, and what he does is inspired and influenced by India's traditions. He goes on to say in that interview that he deserves or derives his strength from India's attributes. He presents India to the world as it is and as he is. Speaking on the ties with the US, Prime Minister said that there is an unprecedented trust between the leaders of both US and India. PM said that India deserves a much higher, deeper and wider profile and of course a greater role on the global stage. Prime Minister Narendra Modi emphasized that India is gaining its rightful position in the world. Nearly 75 years after its independence, Prime Minister said and told Wall Street Journal that we do not see India as supplanting any nation, but only adding value to nations and to the world. at large. PM also batting for diversification in supply chain. So going beyond just depending upon one or two supply chain options and perhaps making the world a multilateral fora. Speaking about India's demand on the UNSCA expansion, that means the UN Security Council expansion, Prime Minister said that there has to be an evaluation of the current membership of the UN Security Council. He also said that the world should be asked if it wants India to be there or not. Speaking on the Russia-Ukraine issue, PM said that India supports all genuine efforts to end the conflict. And he also said that India will do whatever it can to ensure enduring peace and stability. Now, further speaking on the Russia-Ukraine war or the conflict, PM Narendra Modi said that all countries should respect international law. PM clearing India's stand said some people say that we are neutral, but India is not neutral. India is on the side of peace. PM said the world has full confidence that India's topmost priority is peace. PM reiterated that resolve disputes with diplomacy and dialogue, not war or conflicts. Prime Minister also sending a stern message across to China. PM said that normal bilateral ties with China, peace and tranquility in the border areas is essential. In a direct message to China, PM said that we have a core belief in respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity, observing the rule of law and peaceful resolution of differences and disputes. PM also underlined India is fully prepared and committed to protect its sovereignty and dignity. Now, let's give you a background of how India-US ties have grown over the past many decades. China remains a common challenger for both India and US. The recent fortification of equations between India and the US is also because of the China factor. For US, India is a pivotal partner against Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific. For India, US is the most important ally against China's expansionist strategy. The US sees India as a geopolitical counterbalancing for the China threat. For India, it is to also rise as an Asian giant, not just an alternate to China, but of course an alternate to the world as a manufacturing hub, as a supply chain option. Defense cooperation or cooperation remains a win-win situation for both nations. For America, India turns out to be a big defense market. For India, it is important as it will reduce its dependence not just on Russian arms, but also our entire import bill. We want to make in India, and technology transfer is a key issue, key aspect towards making in India and India becoming a defense exporter rather than an importer. US President Joe Biden on most occasions has had and maintained a pro-India stance since the 90s. Here's why. Back in 1998, when India conducted its nuclear tests, then Senator Joe Biden recognized the significance and stature of India as a nation and emphasized that it could not be isolated forever. He was a senator then. In 2001, as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Joe Biden penned a letter to then President George W. Bush urging his administration to lift sanctions imposed on India, arguing that if the sanctions are removed, India will respond with reciprocal acts of goodwill in non-proliferation and other arenas. In 2006, Joe Biden said that he knew that by 2020, India and the US will be two closest nations. In 2008, Joe Biden played a significant role in the US Senate's approval of the historic nuclear deal with India in 2008. Upon approval, Joe Biden said it's more than just a nuke deal, it's a positive departure in Indo-US equations. He was a senator then. 2013, speaking at the Bombay Stock Exchange, Joe Biden emphasized the importance of expanding economic ties between the two countries and said that India can enhance economic influence around the world and in the process, lift the whole world. He was US Vice President at that time. 2015, Vice President Joe Biden advocated for stronger counterterrorism cooperation between the two nations. In 2020, as President, Joe Biden objected to Donald Trump when he referred to Air India as filthy. But as India and China inch closer, China is also feeling the jitters. India taking leaps as far as deals on Predator drones, GE F-414 engines, which are on the cards. China obviously jittery, saying India's trade with the US can't replace the trade with China because China absorbs nearly $3 trillion of US debt. Now, India also moving forward as Prime Minister Narendra Modi calling for diversification in supply chains. China, in the meanwhile, saying very clearly that China cannot be replaced. India cannot replace China on the global supply chain aspect is concerned. India is not seeking to replace China, but giving nations another option. Indo-US eyeing cooperation in defense and, of course, telecom. Resolve issues, do not target China, don't make it an objective to target us. PM Modi asserting the commitment to protect sovereignty. China says India must abandon geopolitical calculations. Second Indian Prime Minister to be invited for the official state visit. China says India must not join the US. It's reckless and a selfish game. These are the aspects that stand out. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go across to our guests one by one. Dr. Bharat Barai, US-India Community Foundation member, is with us. Arun Kumar Singh, former India ambassador to the US, is with us. And we also have, and he's also a distinguished international fellow, Center for the Advanced Study of India. Rick Rosso is also there with us. He's the director of the chair, US-India Policy Studies, CSIS. Michael Kugelman, director, South Asia Institute, Wilson Center, is also with us. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Greetings. And let's hope this visit brings further good tidings. I'm going to start with Bharat Barai ji. Dr. Bharat Barai, you've had a hectic and very tension-filled last 2 or 3 months. It was all aimed at a big diaspora event in Chicago. Finally, you've got the Reagan Center, last-minute confirmations, 1,000 seating capacity, and there will be nearly 100,000 people vying for those 1,000 seats. So take us through what's planned and how important is PM Modi's visit this time around. Dr. Barai.
PM Modi is a people's prime minister. He has kept very good relationship with the diaspora all over the world, including United States. We had the honor and the opportunity and privilege of hosting at Madison Square Garden, which launched his international recognition. And if I caught President Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry, Mr. Prime Minister, we cannot match the rock star reception that you received at Madison Square Garden. Ever since then, there is a bonhomie between the Prime Minister and the diaspora, whether it is in Australia, whether it is in England, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in France, whether it's in Denmark, whether it's in Germany, and of course, in the United States. The diaspora has been working very actively for India, and saying that the Prime Minister is very actively working for India to try to make India a much better country. He wants to take it to the level of a developed country, and in every sphere he is working tirelessly, and we as diaspora want to join him in whatever way we can do to help the living standard of India people.
What is the biggest expectation, Dr. Barai, before I bring in Arunji and the rest of the other guests? Quick question with you, sir. What is your biggest expectation as representing the Indian diaspora in the US?
We have asked the Prime Minister the topic of his talk to us, the role of diaspora in the growth story of India. So he can advise us, he can guide us, what can the diaspora do for India? I mean, lots of people are doing many good things to try to elevate the status of India, and the diaspora has been active both financially. As you know, the diaspora contribute or they remit almost $100 billion to India every year from different parts of the world. In addition, as far as the US diaspora is concerned, they actively educate the congressmen and senators, and when it comes to bills, either it is anti-India bills, some people try to play mischief in US Congress also, and that's the time the diaspora work very actively. And if you remember in 2008, when the nuclear treaty was brought before the US Congress, it was called Dead on Arrival. It had only support of 200 Republican members or little less than that, and no Democratic support.
Right.
Same way in US Senate. And it was diaspora that made it possible. And it was Prime Minister then Manmohan Singh who said, if it was not for Indian diaspora, the nuclear treaty bill would not have passed the US Congress. So diaspora works in many ways, and a lot of it is working with the congressmen and senators. And I give credit to all our Indian Americans all over the USA.
Dr. Barai, please stay on with us. Arunji, thank you very much. Ambassador, if I may ask you, for you, what is the biggest highlight or perhaps the biggest box that you would want ticked by the time Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes off from the US of A towards Egypt?
We would hope that some of the decisions that are being anticipated, for example, decision related to the GE jet engine, decision related to semiconductors, some additional decisions related to cooperation in critical and emerging technologies, some decisions related to future path for defense cooperation. If clear decisions and paths forward are identified and announced for those, I think that will be certainly a major achievement. Of course, before that, the visit in itself is a significant achievement. You've referred to the interview that the Prime Minister gave to Wall Street Journal, where he spoke about India playing a greater role in global affairs, commensurate with its size and weight. And I think this visit will certainly contribute to that process. The fact that the US has decided to make it an official state visit. This is only the third state visitor of the Biden administration. And also that the US Congress has decided to invite the Prime Minister to address a joint session for the second time.
Yes.
And very few global leaders have been given this kind of an opportunity to address a joint session of Congress twice. And reflecting the broad bipartisan support in the US political system and in Congress among Republicans and Democrats for the India relationship. So I think clear decisions to advance specific areas of cooperation, clear recognition that US recognizes that India will play a greater role in global affairs and is supportive of that role. I think those would be key decisions and important outcomes from the visit.
But managing equations with America for India is not going to be easy. Are we going to tilt away from Russia? So far, you know, that kind of alignment, Arun Singh ji, has not been easy because America will expect a lot in return. It's not easy to be friends of America. That's what many people believe. Many say, many experts say that you'd rather be an enemy of America than be its friend. There's a very geopolitical view that says that. Where do you stand?
Well, sure. You know, some experts say one thing and some experts say exactly the other. So recently there was an article which said that India was a bad bet for the US. And there was another article which said that India was the best bet for the US. So there are views and views. But clearly, I think if you look at the current global situation, there is an intense geopolitical competition going on between US, Russia, and China. And what India needs to do, keeping in mind its own interests and its comprehensive national interests, is to build further the relationship with the United States, sustain the relationship with Russia, and strengthen itself to deal with the challenge from China. And in this process, US will be an important partner. And it's not a question of tilting towards one or the other. It's a question of building partnerships where you strengthen yourself. And most countries in international relations do not do relationship based on either or. You know, countries that have a relationship with India don't say that they are not going to have a relationship with Pakistan. They have it each, depending on how their national interest plays out. And similarly, you know, US has a difficult relationship with China, but still wants to maintain some discussion, dialogue going on with China. So I think if we are consolidating the relationship with the US, because it is our largest trading partner, largest investment partner, largest single country presence of Indian origin diaspora, a country that is supportive of India's rise. And US has said that they see the rise of India to be in US interest. They see India as a net security provider in the region. They are ready to provide and partner with India in higher levels of technology. I mean, that's an opportunity we must seize. But that doesn't mean that we are tilting away or tilting towards anybody. I think India is taking actions and decisions that will be of use to India from its own national interest point of view.
But that's where the biggest challenge, isn't it, Rick? Because America will always see it from its own interests, about safeguarding American interests. India is looking at trying to further its interests. Now, will they converge, or will that always be a point of divergence?
Well, that's where regular meetings are important. The divergences are pretty obvious. I think if we have differing approaches in how we engage other countries in South Asia, which most of India's neighborhood has had a difficult time towing the line on democracy and balancing relationship with other nations. So we need to make sure that how the United States engages India's neighbors comports well with India's own strategy there. Getting that wrong could be really dangerous for the U.S.-India relationship. How we engage things, Russia invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, we're dancing a very delicate dance on this one as well. We think the upside of the relationship, when we look at China, when we look at commercial engagement and such, is big enough where we're not going to sever the relationship over differing views on Russia, Ukraine. But that's today, that's this administration, this leadership. There's going to be things like this popping up all the time because we don't have a shared overview in a lot of issues on global affairs. But we do have shared overview on the big ones, on the threat that China poses for regional instability, the threat that climate change poses for global challenges, the need to move people, the need to move money between trade and investment. These areas, there's a lot of overlap, and it's more than enough to build a very important and powerful agenda, but also to make sure that we don't blow up the relationship over areas where we have differences.
Two aspects, Rick, on the UN Security Council expansion and, doing away with the veto powers that is enjoyed by 5 nations. Now, India has a very strong position there. But before we get into the UNSC, pivoting away from China, how easy or difficult is it going to be for the US itself? Because China buys into a huge amount of the US debt. And that's what China wields as a clout over any US aggression or move against Chinese interests.
Well, I think, you've had successive American presidents, including President Trump, in a very kind of rare speech talking about foreign policy, but conveying to the American public that peeling away from China is in our national interest, and it's going to cause some pain. It's going to cause some economic hardship. The low cost, the relative low inflation that we've had in consumer products over the last couple of decades, is largely driven by the fact that China was the low cost manufacturer. Now, other countries, even before the drawback, even before the trade fight with China, even before COVID, had already started looking for other destinations. I don't think India was necessarily first on that list. You saw a lot of companies rushing to Mexico, Vietnam, Malaysia, but India stands well. And part of that is not, of course, the agenda that Modi himself is going to undertake, but what are state governments doing in India to improve the ease of doing business and improve the business environment? If those things get right, then that really will add another important leg to the relationship. I mean, India is already our 8th largest goods trading partner and quite a bit higher if you count services on top of that. The United States is India's largest trade partner. So the economic relationship already is fairly robust and healthy. But when we look at the big ones in the U.S. view, the big 3, of course, our trade relationship with China, with Mexico and Canada, India still has some distance to the frontier. But I think we can get there. It's going to involve a lot of reforms, a lot of process issues in India. But our companies enjoy working together. Our people like moving back and forth. So that's a great bedrock to build this a really powerful and dynamic trade relationship on.
Can this become bipartisan, the point of view with vis-a-vis India, Michael? Or will there always be a divergence there too across the alley?
No, I think one of the big success stories for U.S.-India relations over the last few years is that there is very strong bipartisan, multi-partisan support for the partnership. And of course, I would think it's the same in India. And indeed, I mean, certainly we've heard criticism from a number of what I would describe as progressive Democrats on Capitol Hill, particularly in terms of rights and democracy issues. But that does not suggest that these individuals oppose the idea of a deeper U.S.-India partnership. And in fact, I can remember when India experienced that terrible COVID surge back in 2021, some of these very U.S. members of Congress that had been critical of India on other issues were some of the first to issue statements of solidarity and support. So I think that that's a big success story for this. There are a lot of success stories for the relationship over the last few years, but I think the fact that you have very strong support on both sides of the political aisle for moving things forward is important. And looking at what happened during the Trump era, there was a lot of major changes to U.S. foreign policy, and unfortunately, many of America's top partnerships experienced stress, including America's relations with NATO allies in East Asia. But the relationship with India, even though there were some tensions for sure, particularly over trade, it remained in a strong place. And again, that's because you had a Republican administration that was keen to move things forward, even a Republican administration led by a maverick president in President Trump. So my point is that, no, I really don't see partisanship as something that's going to cause a major challenge for the relationship at all. I think there's really very sound bipartisan, multi-partisan support for the idea of moving the partnership forward.
India is pushing for technology transfer in defense. The jet engines transfer is a big issue. And support as far as UN reforms is concerned. Will America be inclined? Michael.
Well, I mean, on the UN issue, and we've heard President Obama, of course, very famously when he was in India, as I recall, during one of his visits, calling for India to receive he said that he supported the idea of India becoming a permanent member of the UN Security Council, which suggested, at least even if indirectly, support for the idea of reforms within the UN to make it possible for the likes of India to become a permanent member. But I think on the issue of tech, that's more clear-cut. This, in my view, has become one of the newest big areas of cooperation for the U.S.-India relationship. Looking at ISET, which I think is so significant in that you finally have this opportunity to push beyond the bureaucracy that has really held back a lot of the potential cooperation on tech issues. The fact that the national security advisors in both countries are overseeing this major new initiative on critical and emerging technologies, I think that suggests the degree of purpose and determination within both governments to move things forward on the tech front. And the fact that if this GE deal does indeed go forward, and if it's announced, you're looking at something that really hasn't happened before, a level of tech transfer that hasn't happened in the past. Still a lot to talk about. The export control issue is still something that has to be addressed, but I do see tech as a major, one of the key areas of growth in the relationship, a lot of potential for more cooperation there.
Because India's growth story is largely services and software driven, and if it's got to be comprehensive, then we've got to become a manufacturing hub too, and it's got to become a lot of the hardware produced also. But Ambassador Singh, if I may ask you, the story is also about narratives and security. There are elements who are operating against India's sovereignty, operating out of US soil. Now, America can go anywhere around the world and take out anybody who's an enemy to American interests. And President Biden can say that out loud, that we will find you and we will take you down. But can we do that? Will America cooperate with us to allow us to take down those who are acting against our sovereignty? Is that going to be an issue?
I don't think it's a major issue. I mean, from what I understand, there's been very good cooperation from the US in dealing with people who are acting against India's interests and against India's sovereignty. And over the years, that relationship has consolidated significantly. For example, if you look at the 26/11 attack that took place in Mumbai, and in unraveling issues related to that attack, the sources of that attack, intelligence related to that attack, the US had been a very, very important partner. And then again, some of the challenges we face from people based in the Gulf. And again, US has been very, very cooperative in working with countries in the region to address some of the challenges that India has faced. So, there could be sometimes differences of interpretation related to application of certain laws. But by and large, over the years, it's not like what you see the challenge in Canada.
Right.
But in the US, there has been responsiveness to addressing India's concerns.
We should have Zaka Jacob joining us anytime. So final question to Dr. Barai, the SB 403 issue. Dr. Barai, are you going to ask the Prime Minister to have a look at it?
I don't know that I would like to get involved in that part at this time. That's the honest answer.
But we'd see if that issue is brought up with the Prime Minister at some forum, because there are many within the Indian diaspora who are concerned with this SB 403 law. But we'll keep that in abeyance for further discussions through the course of the next 3-4 days. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. Much appreciate. A very, very engaging conversation. Let's quickly go across to Zaka. Zaka, you're up and about, on the move. So, nighttime in India is daytime in the US. Daytime in the US, nighttime in the US is, and vice versa. So, you're going to be working round the clock. So, whereabouts are you?
So I was thinking coming here would be a bit like a holiday, but it's not, especially when you're covering Prime Minister Modi. It's 24/7, it's round the clock. I'm here outside the Lotte Hotel. It's the Lotte New York Palace. That's where the official Indian delegation will be staying. In about a couple of hours from now, it's about 11 o'clock local time here in New York. At about 1 o'clock in the afternoon is when Prime Minister is expected to land at the JFK airport. There will be a small welcome ceremony there at the JFK airport, and the bigger one is going to be outside the Lotte Hotel here where we're expecting over 1,000 folks from the Indian American community, the Friends of India, who are all going to be landing up here around the time when Prime Minister Modi comes here. So that's going to be sort of in the middle of the night for you folks. So you can touch base once again when there is more people. But just to give you an outline of why this visit is the most important one that Prime Minister has undertaken to the US. Remember, he's had 6 visits to the US since he became Prime Minister in 2014. But this is the first ever state visit. That is the highest level diplomatic visit that can be extended by any US administration to a visiting head of government or state. So this is the first time that Prime Minister Modi will be getting a state visit. Now, a large part of it is symbolism. You have the state banquet, you have the 21-gun salute, the military bands will be playing. That's going to be on Thursday morning at the White House. Here in New York, of course, after he lands up today, he will be meeting an eclectic group of people, CEOs, Nobel laureates, thinkers, folks from the film world and so on. So those meetings are going to happen from 4 o'clock local time till about 7:38. And then tomorrow morning, the big event here in New York is just a little further from here on the east side, overlooking the beautiful East River. At the UN headquarters, in the north lawns of the UN headquarters, Prime Minister Modi will be leading the International Yoga Day celebrations. That's going to be tomorrow morning, local time, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. He'll be joined by the UN Secretary General. He'll be joined by the rotating president of the UNGA currently. There'll be a lot of celebrities joining him as well. And we're given to understand by Indian officials, over 100 people from different walks of life will be joining Prime Minister Modi at the north lawns of the UN headquarters. So that's going to be the Yoga Day celebrations tomorrow morning, after which he heads out.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, are you stretching your limbs? Which asana are you going to practice? But more importantly, between the two leaders, what is the one big issue they're going to be meditating on? One big issue.
I think, look, because it's coming just a couple of months before the G20 meeting, and India is the host of the G20, I think a lot of the conversation will revolve around that. And as you well know, Anand, last time around in Bali, when Indonesia was the host of the G20, it took them days to finally thrash out a draft agreement because the Russia-Ukraine war, they couldn't agree on a common terminology, and finally they did. There were 2 paragraphs. India played a very important role in drafting those 2 paragraphs. This time again, a lot of the conversation is going to be twofold. One, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war and its fallout. Of course, India has taken as the Prime Minister said, we've chosen the side of peace in this war. The other big sort of shadow on this visit, as it were, would be China. I think that's going to be the dragon in the room. Yeah. Just now, you've seen Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, conclude a visit to China. He's flying straight back and will be straight joining the delegation level talks in Washington. That's going to happen on Thursday. Right. So there is going to be a lot of said and unsaid things about China. So I think these are the 2 dominant themes because of the topicality around this visit and the time in which it's coming. The Russia-Ukraine war and its fallout, and of course how to deal with a growingly aggressive China.
Where you don't have time to get over jet lag, and you're not going to have time to feel it either or miss it either. So all the best to you over the next 72 hours, Zaka. We're going to see a lot of you on air. Thanks a lot.
There's a little trick to beating jet lag. One of my friends said this when I boarded the flight. He said, "Don't sleep on your first flight. You'll be okay by the time you hit New York." So I think that's the trick to follow. Just imagine while you're already on the plane that you're living on New York time and not India time.
Well, I hope you've been able to cheat yourself, because we're going to see a lot of you, and we're going to keep calling you to come shoulder this entire coverage that we're going to lead here on CNN News 18. Great work. Good speaking with you, Zaka. Have a good day. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, Zaka mentioned International Yoga Day. We are right on the cusp of it, and PM will be celebrating IYD, or International Yoga Day, the 8th edition, 2015 onwards. This is into 2023. And that will be at the UN headquarters in New York, the first day of his state visit, and PM will lead the global community. Joining us live right now is Gurudev Shri Ravishankar. Gurudev, namaste. The 8th edition of International Yoga Day is right upon us. Why is yoga so important for humanity? My first question.
See, yoga is not just one fitness thing. It also uplifts human spirit. It helps one to communicate with people better. Yoga also brings skills that are deep hidden within you. Talents starts manifesting from within you. So yoga, usually we understand it's only a asana. Yogasana, we think it's yoga. No. Pranayama, meditation, and all this together is called yoga. Yeah, otherwise it will become just an exercise. Without pranayama, without meditation, yoga is never complete. Yeah. When you take it from whichever angle you start, either you start from meditation and do asana, or start with asana and then pranayama and meditation, the benefit is multifold. More than 100 benefits you can count that comes to you from yoga and meditation.
But Gurudev, you've been teaching the world the art of living for decades. But in the last 8 years, since the world adopted 21st of June as International Yoga Day, we've seen conflict, we've seen pandemic. Have you seen yoga grow also?
Anand, you see, 42 years back when we started, it was not that popular.
Ji.
It was not a language of narrative of mainstream. Okay. Language of mainstream. That's why those days I kept it as art of living, gave the name art of living. But that would create a curiosity in the minds of people. Oh, let me go and find out what it is.
See.
So then we present them a little bit of asanas and pranayama, meditation, and then wisdom. That this has transformed millions of lives around the world. Actually, in 2009, there was a very well-known yoga teacher from Portugal, who is a Portuguese person, Spanish, and he would not even speak English, but he was sannyasi from from there, Portugal, and he came. He would speak Spanish and Portuguese.
He could speak.
He would not speak English. So he came to Bangalore, and then we had a yoga conference where B.K. Saingar was part of it, and then Baba Ramdev, and there were all yoga experts were there. That time we appealed to the United Nations that you have a World Diabetes Day, you have World Toilet Day, you have World Idli Day.
Idli Day also, yeah, true.
How come we have no World Yoga Day? So, but then when Prime Minister took it up, and then so many countries supported, and we finally got that recognition. Today, nearly 2.5 billion people around the world are practicing yoga.
Wow.
That's a big number, yeah? So it's a mainstream narrative now, today, that nobody has any resistance for yoga. Just imagine those days, there was so much resistance that the people would say this is anti the religions of their country, or culture of those countries. It was a very tough journey at those days. I mean, many yoga teachers have faced that. They would always be tagged as occult. It's a very easy tag that you put on anything that's good. But today, you practice yoga, you do yoga in corporate world, in bureaucratic setups, officials do this. So it has found a great acceptance.
Yes.
And that's good for our population. Post-COVID, there is aggression and depression in the minds of people. Mental health has become a biggest issue in the world.
Very right.
Yoga will help them to come out of these extreme human behaviors, imbalanced human behavior.
You're very rightly put, Gurudev. But let me ask you this. You talked about resistance. Now there is this whole aspect that yoga is being used for a Hindutva push. There is a theological angle that's being added to it. But we see core Islamic nations like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we see Christian nations, you mentioned Spain, Portugal, so many others who have adapted and adopted yoga, and there are so many people practicing it. So is yoga science and spiritualism somewhere? or does it have a certain angle of theology to it?
See, you have to first define when you are saying science, theology, or spiritualism. It's all the three together. Theology means what? That which has come from ancient times. Yoga has come from ancient times.
Yeah.
Is it science? Yes, it is a science.
Yes.
Very practical science.
Yeah.
And there have been evidence-based research on them. Number of research on yoga, benefits of yoga. And then you said, whether it is spiritualism, anything that uplifts spirit is spiritualism. And what is spirit? Spirit is made up of, consciousness is made up of love, compassion, integrity, creativity, intuitive ability, all these qualities.
Prana. Yeah.
So all these are, part of spirit. When you say spiritualism, spiritualism is that which helps you to connect with the universal spirit, and which connects you to people around the globe.
Yeah.
The notion of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family, has come from our spiritual wisdom only.
True, very rightly said. And yog means yoking, and you're saying it's again what you're saying. Spiritualism is connecting yourself to humanity and also to the entire universe. But बहुत लोग कहते हैं गुरुदेव, स्ट्रेस है तो योगा करो, बूढ़े हो गए तो योगा करो, यंगर जनरेशन के लिए क्या जरूरत है योगा?
इनफैक्ट हर बच्चे को आप देखिए, 3 साल उम्र तक हर बच्चा योगा करता ही है. सब योगा का एक्सरसाइज करता है, उनका ब्रीदिंग देख के उनका माइंड
बाय डिफॉल्ट होता है, इनवॉलंटरी होता है.
दे लिव इन द प्रेजेंट मोमेंट.
जी.
योगा कभी बूढ़े होकर के करना भी मुश्किल होता है. शुरू से उसका अभ्यास करें, स्पेशली इन टीनेज. इफ यू प्रैक्टिस योगा, दैट्स वेरी वेरी गुड फॉर यू, because it helps you to channelize your energy in a more creative and productive angle.
मैं बच्चों से यूथ की बात कर रहे हैं गुरुदेव. इशू ऑफ मेंटल हेल्थ, वेलबींग, एडिक्शन, आइडेंटिटी इश्यूज, कंफ्यूजन्स, you think yoga will help or can help?
Definitely yoga is helping. Yoga brings that balance. See, we are all made up of father and mother. That means there is a male and female energies are within us. Yoga brings the balance in this. And yoga helps one to get out of addictions, many different type of addictions. So definitely, I have seen this result happening. And around the world, not just in any one country, one race or religious group. Across the globe, I've seen, people are getting over the stress and getting well, and getting out of all these addictions, as you mentioned. And opioid problem. That's opioids. Also, this has helped them tremendously. We have done a research in Cleveland with a group of people, and it has given tremendous result from that, and people are appreciating it and they're taking now everywhere.
Gurudev, thank you very much. I know you will also be there at the UN on International Yoga Day. You've just spared time before you get on the flight. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Ladies and gentlemen, big update even before Prime Minister Narendra Modi touches down. Here comes China's, let's say, position. And the fact that India has been accorded, or Prime Modi has been accorded the state visit. They have actually blocked a proposal by India, the US, at the United Nations to designate the Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorist Sajid Mir as a global terrorist. He's been wanted for his involvement in 26/11 Mumbai terrorist attack, and they've blocked the need for him or the move to him being named a global terrorist. Once again underlining this veto power accorded to just 5 nations, which India has been contending for a long time. So big development that China has blocked this move by India and US joint move to naming Sajid Mir, designating him a global terrorist. So we're going to take a very short break, but on the way, when we come back, we dive straight into a CNN News 18 exclusive deep investigation on whether Delhi is becoming a drug hub. You must watch this. Delhi Police, Customs, NCB data showing consumption of drugs on the rise in the national capital. Stay with us. Anvit Srivastava getting us this deep dive investigative report.
Which was yesterday, is the Gaddar Day that is today. On June 20 last year, remember, Eknath Shinde and some MLAs had gathered at a hotel in Surat to break away from the Mahavikas Aghadi government. CNN News 18's Mumbai Bureau Chief Vinaya Deshpande is joining us on this story. Vinaya, a very good morning to you. Could you give us more details about this demand that has been raised by the Shiv Sena UBT for declaring June 20th as the Traitors' Day?
A very good morning to you. In fact, we have seen that politics over this has been raging in Maharashtra for the last few days, especially on the background of the 57th Foundation Day that was celebrated yesterday by the faction claiming to carry the true legacy of the Shiv Sena and of Babasaheb Thackeray. Now, in view of that, we have seen in the last few days, the UBT faction has kept on having Eknath Shinde, saying that it was, the Traitors' Day, which was to be celebrated after the Foundation Day, which was on the 19th of June, because ostensibly this was the same day when a bunch of MLAs, along with Eknath Shinde, had in fact on this lie moved to thereby bringing down the government thereafter and changing political equations in Maharashtra almost permanently. So on that background, today several protests have been lined up. In fact, planned protest which is going to take place is the one that is going to be held by the NCP in Pune, but in Mumbai as well. At several locations, police bandobast has been beefed up. May it be Worli, may it be Dadar. It is likely that the Shiv Sena UBT faction as well might protest in order to mark today's day as the Traitors' Day. Meanwhile, Shiv Sena UBT faction member of parliament Sanjay Raut has tweeted early morning today saying that this is a public demand that he has now written to the UN seeking that 20th June be declared as World Traitors' Day. This is ostensibly on the background of the recent fight between the two parties we had seen where Eknath Shinde and his team had boasted about the kind of international reputation that Eknath Shinde has with respect to his work schedule and how internationally several leaders were amazed by his efficiency. And so was there a slamming of Uddhav Thackeray as internationally being chosen as one of the best chief ministers when he was the chief minister. So on that background now, there is this fresh war of words that has erupted. We have seen Sanjay Raut put out a fresh tweet saying that today's day should be marked as World Traitors' Day in view of marking the day when all these people went away. So the war of words between both the factions continues. Today we might see some protests in some parts, especially in Pune at least, where the NCP has a stronghold. NCP itself is going to hold a protest. Later in the day, we might see protests in Mumbai as well, but there is no official word on it as of now. But continuing with the war of words, both Uddhav Thackeray as well as the NCP have said in the last few days that today is ostensibly the Traitors' Day because today was the day when Eknath Shinde, along with a bunch of MLAs, had jumped fences and had gone to Surat. Back to you.
Also, Vinaya, do we have any reaction from the Shinde Sena on this Traitors' Day remark?
Well, for the last 2 to 3 days, these remarks have been, made, and that is why we have seen that Eknath Shinde himself, while in his address on the Foundation Day, had spoken about it. Today, as such, there is no fresh response. This is not a fresh war of words anyway. For the last 2 to 3 days, we have seen these kind of reactions go on and off. And to that, Eknath Shinde and his faction have also responded, slamming Uddhav Thackeray and his faction, saying that, we saw even on stage yesterday, Gajanan Kesar spoke about it, saying that they should not really be called traitors because the reason why the previous government came down was not because of anybody else, but because of the kind of troubles that the Shiv Sainik faced at the hands of the NCP, which was taking away and extracting all the funds, as well as not giving any prominence to Shiv Sena. And that was the main reason why the MLAs who felt stifled while sitting in the Mahavikas Aghadi had to actually leave, and that was the main reason that should not be neglected. So we have seen response on this jibe come up from Eknath Shinde and his faction for the last 2 to 3 days. As of today, after Sanjay Raut's tweet, we haven't yet seen any response from them. Back to you.
Also, Manya, how is this going to impact the Shinde Sena's image, given that assembly polls are also around the corner next year that are going to happen in Maharashtra? So how is this going to impact the party's image?
Well, we have seen that internally surveys that have been conducted by the Eknath Shinde group do not seem to be favorable for them as of now. They are completely aware that there is some amount of backlash because of the decision that they have taken, and they will have to work their way through. So there is a clear recognition of the challenge because of the narrative that is being used. Also, very simply, Shiv Sena Uddhav Thackeray faction is playing the victim card and is claiming that, time and again, these are the people who received them. We saw the same line that was taken up by Uddhav Thackeray as well in his Foundation Day speech yesterday, saying that, they have stabbed the womb of a mother, and that is how they have gone through. Narrative building with respect to the cadres and to general population, which has been a Shiv Sena follower, has been that the Uddhav Thackeray faction has been...
चार तो मैंने मकान बेच दिए, समय नहीं। शादी में जो मेरे को थोड़ा बहुत गहना बत्ता मिला था, अंगूठी मिली थी, कूड़े के भाव बेच दिया। 47 गाड़ियाँ मेरी अपनी, वो सब तो जी ऐसे बिक गई।
मैंने अगर वो पैसा जोड़ा होता तो एक कार ले ली होती मैंने लमसम।
बहुत परेशान हुआ सर, मेरी आंख भी इसी चक्कर में आंख खराब हो गई थी। वाइफ शादी हुई है, किसी नई शादी हुई है, बच्चा डेथ कर गया था अभी जनवरी में।
ये बच्चे हमारे 30-35 हज़ार के महीना कमाने वाले आज यहाँ पर।
In 2020, Delhi police arrested 912 persons under the Narcotic Drugs Psychotropic Substances Act. 2 years later, in 2022, the number rose to 1499. The same year, Delhi Air Customs registered at least 30 cases of cocaine smuggling and 20 cases of heroin smuggling. 2 years back, in 2020, these numbers were limited to 1 and 5 respectively. If we talk about NCB, 38 kgs of Seizures was made of heroin in 2020, which rose to 117 kgs in 2022, and cases of cocaine seizures went up from 1 kg to 14 kgs. Is the national capital on target? Why is Delhi becoming the dumping ground of narcotics in India? And if so, who are the people behind it? We'll find all the answers in this special report.
In 2019, a team from the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment for the first time conducted a detailed survey of the Indian population using various substances and those affected by substance use disorders. The findings were shocking. The government report said there were 2.9 crore dependents on alcohol, 28 lakh people to opioids, 25 lakh dependents on marijuana, and over 8 lakh dependents on inhalant users. Given such high number of users, while the latest government survey remains due. CNN News 18 hits the ground to probe the easy availability of drugs in the national capital.
दिल्ली शहर में भी मिल जाता आसानी से। तैमूर नगर हो गया, मंगोलपुरी हो गया, सुल्तानपुरी हो गया, जहांगीरपुरी हो गया, ये अपना दक्षिणपुरी हो गया और कोटला मुबारकपुर हो गया।
सबसे पहले तो गांजा जो है कि वो तो इतना अवेलेबल है कि समझ लो कि हर 2 गली में जहाँ चाहो वहाँ ले लो और खुलेआम ले लो।
वहाँ पैसे दे दो, क्या तो भाई एक पुड़िया दे देता हूँ।
In order to unveil the operational details between the drug cartels and small-time peddlers, CNN News 18 team established contact with one such gang.
सबसे ज़्यादा डिमांड में कौन कौन से हैं?
जैसे कि गांजा हो गया और एमडी हो गई, कोकीन हो गई, हीरोइन हो गई और एलएसडी पेपर हो गए, ये सब डिमांड में ज़्यादा चल रहे हैं इस टाइम।
इंडिया में कहाँ से आ रही कोकीन?
कोकीन आ रही कोलंबिया, साउथ अफ्रीका, अमेरिका से आ रही है। गोलियां पेट में डाल के ला रहे हैं, वो हो गए, या पानी के जहाज को थ्रू उसके थ्रू लाते हैं।
सबसे ज़्यादा कीमत में क्या बिक रहा है अभी?
कोकीन
बिक रहा है। दिल्ली में ज़्यादा बिक रहा है
कोकीन और एमडी।
जो बड़े बड़े होटल हैं और जो क्लब्स हैं उनमें क्या डिमांड है?
उनमें भी कोकीन, क्रैक बॉल।
कोकीन और क्रैक बॉल की। क्रैक बॉल का क्या प्राइस है, कितने में आती है और कैसे देते हैं? मतलब बॉल के हिसाब से आती है?
बॉल के हिसाब से आती है वो।
अच्छा,
कितने पॉइंट की बॉल होती है, उसका कीमत होगा 5000।
Data accessed by CNN News 18 also shows that seizures in Delhi have witnessed an exponential rise. While only 748 cases were registered by Delhi police under the NDPS Act, in 2022, this number rose to 1179. While number of seizures of narcotics by Delhi Air Customs also went up in 2022 at the Delhi airport, the NCB's data also states that seizures of heroin, cocaine and LSD remained on the rise. Union Home Minister Amit Shah in April this year inaugurated the first national conference with the state and union territory heads of the Anti-Narcotics Task Force. The newly formed Anti-Narcotics Task Force's aim was to crack down on the sale of psychotropic substances and expedite cases registered under the NDPS Act. As we reached out to the Delhi Police's Anti-Narcotics Task Force, we learned that the department has zeroed in on 64 locations across Delhi that have been identified as hotspots of narcotic supply and sale.
We are right now at the Aerocity, one of the hotspots of drug trades as identified by Delhi Police's Anti-Narcotics Task Force. Senior officials believe that proximity with the state border of Haryana, the international airport, and heavy footfall of international passengers is what makes this spot a vulnerable one. Across the road lies Mahipalpur area, another area full of authorized and unauthorized hotels. Among other areas that have been identified by the ANTF across national capital are Delhi University campus, Nizamuddin, Jama Masjid area and South Delhi's Chhatarpur. Surprisingly, a parking lot of one of the hospitals in South Delhi has also made it to the list.
As you said, there are about 64 areas. These 5 areas which you have pointed out are more high-profile areas. Delhi is both a transit as well as destination point for most of the drugs. Apart from the top drug traffickers, we have a list of almost 200 people. Okay. They are also small time, medium type and top drug trafficker. The Lawrence and Goldie gang, they have a very important accomplice called Jaggu. Okay. And Jaggu is a known big drug trafficker of Punjab. ISI makes sure that whatever drones are fitted with drugs, they also put some weapons into it.
But the land routes aren't the only concern for Delhi, as seizures at the airport too have been rising.
So as far as particularly last year is concerned, there is a nearly about 30% increase. And from more previous years, say 2 to 3 years ago, there has been a quantum jump. Now with the kind of drugs that we are catching, we feel that there is a clear shift from the country being a transit point to a consumption center.
We also reached out to the Narcotics Bureau to get a clarity if increased seizures from Delhi would mean that Delhi is witnessing a never-like-before drug inflow, but the agency did not respond. To double-check the increase in drug abuse cases in Delhi, CNN News 18 team visited rehabilitation centers and also the NDDTC run by the AIMS. What the doctors and the staff had to disclose was equally alarming.
I'm currently at the National Drug Dependence Treatment Center in Ghaziabad. The facility has been up and running since 2003 and every year witnesses reformation of thousands of drug addicts. But in the last 5 years, number of patients who register themselves for the first time seeking treatment from drug abuse has seen an exponential rise. Every day, this facility registers at least 40 to 50 new patients, while follow-up is done on 350 to 400 patients daily. This trend certainly is a worrying one.
If we see all these substances and across different states, what's surprising to see is Delhi figures almost in top 5 or top 6 states. in terms of proportion of people consuming various substances and as well as proportion of people who are affected by drug use disorders. So about 3 lakh people are estimated to be affected by charas or ganja use addiction in Delhi. For the
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Anusha Soni. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on his first state visit to the United States of America. On the table right now is everything, from defense cooperation to crucial conversations around technology, telecom, space, manufacturing and possibly semiconductors. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has a power-packed schedule as the crucial visit is set to commence. The Prime Minister is expected to land in about 90 minutes from now. International Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters in New York to a dinner being hosted by President Joe Biden at the White House. India is being seen with renewed hope and enthusiasm in the shifting paradigms of geopolitics, with the expansionist policies of China making the world's superpowers absolutely nervous. Can India reset the global power blocks and strike just the right kind of balance? Our focus on brass tacks tonight.
As there is strategic cooperation, whether it's on the Indo-Pacific, whether it's the common threat of China, whether it is, of course, the fallout of the Russia-Ukraine war, all of those issues will be discussed as well. But I think critical emerging technologies is going to be one big, broad area of focus in the overall India-US bilateral relationship. A whole bunch of substantive deals, particularly in defense technology, are going to be signed. The big one, of course, being the GE jet engine deal for the 414 GE jet engines, which are going to be manufactured in India. There's going to be a great degree of technology transfer as well as part of that deal. Also, the other big deal in the defense realm, which is expected, happens to be the Predator armed drone deal.
Shared values between the two countries are so significant. Shared values like democracy, rule of law, a market economy. American citizens who are of Indian descent, they have continued to contribute to the improved relations between the United States and India.
Well, joining us on the broadcast is our managing editor, Zakir Jacob, tracking that first state visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the United States, live from New York. Good morning, Zakir. Thank you for joining us. We'll just try and connect with Zakir. I believe there's some problem with that connection. But as I said earlier, in just about 90 minutes, the Prime Minister is expected to make a landing. And right after he lands on the US soil, there's a very warm welcome that has been planned by the Indian diaspora and the community. It's a power-packed schedule. The Prime Minister is expected to meet a host of people, right from Elon Musk to various people from the business community, people from arts, cinema, entertainment.